Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. Welcome back to our Uddhava-gita course. Now we're continuing today with this beautiful chapter of the Uddhava-gita, where Krishna is describing here now this comparison between mundane religiosity, specifically the Vedic yagyas of the Veda Samhitas, the common practice which was being done at the time when Krishna comes down and brings yoga. Krishna says, look, this path of yoga has been lost, he said in the Bhagavad Gita. Or in other words, pure spirituality has been lost, and instead people are stuck in a mundane religion, seeking out mundane goals through their religious practices. So there's going to be this comparison here, which is always valid, but it was especially valid at the time when Krishna came, and it's especially valid when you're comparing this path of Vedanta, the path of yoga, which we're teaching here, with the traditional Veda Samhitas. So we are here now in the 11th canto, 21st chapter, verse 26. Krishna says, persons with perverted intelligence. This term comes up a lot when your intelligence isn't working very well. So persons with perverted intelligence do not understand this actual purpose of Vedic knowledge, and instead propagate as the highest truth the flowery statements of the Vedas that promise material rewards. Those in actual knowledge of the Vedas never speak in that way. So he's saying, people don't understand, because he was explaining here in the past classes. By the way, if you want to watch those, make sure you become a member of this channel, and then you can access Uddhava-gita.com to see the entire Uddhava-gita course. So he's explaining pure spirituality. He was just explaining, the path of falling into darkness, the dangers of letting your minds control you. So you see, this is real spirituality, he's saying. This is the real spirituality. And instead, people think that the highest truth is those instructions you find about doing this ritual to get this benefit, and do that thing to get that benefit. And it's all about mundane benefits, material rewards. Purport. The followers of the karma mimamsa philosophy declare that there is no eternal kingdom of God beyond this universe, and that one should therefore become a professional performer of Vedic rituals in order to keep oneself in a material heavenly planet. So this is very interesting. This is like a real thing. Because this path is called the path of Mimamsa. And in the path of Mimamsa, what happens is you have this focus on the rituals. The Mimamsas were like the ritual experts. So they were focused on exactly what rituals you would do. And their philosophy was like, you know what? Actually, there isn't even any God or soul. Never mind all that. These are just ways. This is just the way the material world works. So they came out with this technology. They thought like, look, this is how it works. Never mind, gods or God, or that's all, forget all that. Just do these things, because these things will bring you good results. It was a very, very kind of, and that was his truth. He was like, just do these things and you'll get good karmic results. And so never mind philosophy, bhakti, devotion, spiritual world, kingdom of God, forget all that. This is what you should do to get good karma. That was their focus. So Mimamsa philosophy has been around since forever. And so here Krishna is, of course, comparing it to this real path of yoga. He's now explaining. Excuse me. As explained by the Lord to Sri Uddhava in a previous chapter, there is no actual happiness in the material world, since one will inevitably rotate through the various planetary environments stretching from heaven to hell, and thus always be disturbed within the material atmosphere. So this is the real teaching of yoga, real teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, that there is no situation where you'll be okay in the material world, because everything, your time is pushing you along. So whatever situation you're on now, even if it's good, but you're being pushed. You're going to be pushed out of the situation. And of course, a lot of times the situation isn't good. It's just like one bad situation and you're pushed into another bad situation. But whatever you do, there is no stopping time. So you're always going to be going somewhere else. And so you have this uncertainty, anxiety, and in general suffering, because you're always suffering birth, death, old age, and disease. And you're suffering the three miseries, they say, the miseries from other beings, the miseries from nature, and the miseries coming from your own body and mind. So you're always suffering. There's no joy in this material world. The real path of yoga, the real yogi, it starts when you understand this, using Queen Kunti's words, when you become materially exhausted. I like that term, materially exhausted. That means you just materially, you figure like there is, I can do less suffering, I can get a somewhat okay situation, but there is no really good, there is no definitive solution to my problems in the material scope, because you're always being pushed around. You're getting old, you're gonna die. I mean, what are you gonna do? So you become materially exhausted. You've given up trying to find a situation in material life that will really give you joy and pleasure forever, because it won't last forever. So you get a little bit of joy, but then it comes with all this suffering. So you become materially exhausted, and then you seek the real solution, which is to go back home, back to Godhead. Although the doctor may give a child candy-covered medicine, one who urges the child to eat the candy and throw away the medicine is certainly a great fool. In the same way, the flowery statements of the Vedas describing heavenly enjoyment do not award the real fruit of Vedic knowledge, but merely supply decorative blossoms of sense gratification. As stated in the Vedas, Rig Veda 122.20, Tat Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Surya. Even the demigods who are permanent residents of heaven are always looking to the eternal abode of the Supreme Lord. Foolish people who admire the standard of living in material heaven should therefore note that the demigods themselves are devotees of the Supreme Lord. One should not become a bogus propagator of so-called Vedic knowledge, but should take to Krishna consciousness and make a genuine solution to the problem of progressing in life. Verse 27. Those who are full of lust, avarice, and greed mistake mere flowers to be the actual fruit of life. Bewildered by the glare of fire and suffocated by its smoke, they cannot recognize their own true identity. So why, glare of fire, suffocated by smoke? Because the Vedic yagas are fire-centered. All the Vedic yagas, you'd have like different situations, but basically like the common setup is you have a fire, and onto that fire you make offerings. That was the standard Vedic sacrifice since time immemorial. And so the fire, and then the smoke from the fire, and so the person he's using that example, like that would captivate you to, in a philosophical existential point, like the glare of obtaining things, of getting material rewards is blinding you, and you get suffocated by all these desires, these mundane desires, and so you cannot recognize your own true identity, because that's what we're doing, self-realization. It's the whole point, like, who are you? Because if you get it wrong, if you don't know who you are, then everything you do will be wrong as well. First you have to know who you are, and then you'll know what's in your self-interest. You'll see that come up a lot, that term. Your ultimate self-interest. What's really good for the real you? What's the self? Because if you don't know who the real you is, then you're probably not really pursuing your self-interest. You're actually hurting your self-interest because you're working on the wrong assumption of who you are. So the idea is, as a mundane mentality, you think that you're the body. So you're assuming the wrong identity, and that's why all the decisions are based on this wrong identity. Verse 28. My dear Uddhava, persons dedicated to sense gratification obtained through honoring the Vedic rituals cannot understand that I am situated in everyone's heart, and that the entire universe is non-different from me and emanates from me. Indeed, they are just like persons whose eyes are covered by fog. So that's the difference between spirituality and religiosity. In spirituality, you're focusing on the source, on God. You're understanding that everything comes from God, that God is present in everyone's heart, in the heart of every living entity. When we say heart, we mean center, like a plant. It doesn't have a heart organ, but it has a center, and Krishna is also in the plants. So in every living entity, at the heart, at the middle of it, in the essence of it is Krishna. Krishna is there in everything, and from Krishna the whole universe emanates. So if you're focused on mundane religiosity, if you're approaching religion just to get some sense gratification, some good situation, you want artha or kama, basically artha, you want economic development, wealth, status, and you want kama, pleasure, good things so you can have a good time. So if you want artha and kama, you're missing out on seeing the Lord, on seeing your true self, on seeing the source of yourself, which is God. So Krishna says that's like having your eyes covered by fog. Purport. The word Uddhava-shastra refers to the chanting of certain Vedic hymns by which one obtains fruitive results in this world and the next. The word Shastra also indicates a weapon, and thus Uddhava-shastra also means the weapon used in Vedic sacrifice to kill the sacrificial animal. Because of course a lot of these yagyas involve the killing of animals, which makes it even worse. So the animal would be sacrificed in the ritual. So people would be sacrificing animals to obtain some benefit. Persons exploiting Vedic knowledge for bodily gratification are slaughtering themselves with the weapon of materialistic religious principles. They are also compared to those trying to see within a dense fog, the false bodily concept of life, in which one ignores the eternal soul within the body, is a dense fog of ignorance that blocks our vision of God. Lord Krishna therefore begins his instruction in Bhagavad-gita by clearing away the dense ignorance of the bodily concept of life. Of course, right? The first thing Krishna says when he starts teaching Arjuna in Bhagavad-gita, 20 verses just to explain you are not the body in so many different ways, so many different arguments. Look, understand that you're not the body, because that's the first thing. Who are you? There's no point figuring anything else on life until you figure out, who am I? Because again, if you get it wrong, you'll get everything else wrong. The Lord's final order or law is that every conditioned soul surrender unto Him, learn to serve and love Him, and thus go back home, back to Godhead. This is the process of Krishna consciousness. Verses 29 and 30. Those who are sworn to sense gratification cannot understand the confidential conclusion of Vedic knowledge as explained by me. So here we go. The conclusion of Vedic knowledge. Veda anta vedanta, the conclusion, the end of the knowledge. Taking pleasure in violence, they cruelly slaughter innocent animals in sacrifice for their own sense gratification, and thus worship demigods, forefathers, and leaders among ghostly creatures. Such passion for violence, however, is never encouraged within the process of Vedic sacrifice. So now Krishna is saying, look, and this whole thing developed with all these animal sacrifices. You see this all over the world, right? Many different religions and traditions, even famously the Jewish tradition. Every year you go there and you sacrifice the lamb to God. So this idea of killing animals to please God, it's a strange idea, strange concept. I can kind of see, like, you know, people where they think it makes sense, because it was like a, you know, maybe it was like a big deal. Oh, I'm going to kill an animal, I'm going to eat it, it's nice, we're going to eat meat, you know, we're going to have some food, you know, because you're living in some harsh condition, you know, and it's like, okay, meat is going to be nourishing, and because we're killing, then we should offer this life to a higher entity to offset the killing. So, you know, I can kind of like see the reasoning behind it. But anyway, it gets twisted very easily. And so the whole concept of then doing these rituals where people would be killing animals, and they would be doing it not for spiritual reasons, not to please God. They would be doing it just for their own pleasures. It's because they would think that by killing that animal, they would gain merit and karma sufficient to be able to take birth in a better life. So the idea is you do all these yagyas so that you could, after this human life on earth, you take birth in the planet of the demigods, in Swarga. That was the idea. Or you would kill an animal and offer it to your ancestors, to your forefathers, so that they would help you with something else. You know, help you in battle, help you with your crop, whatever. And of course, some people would even offer animal sacrifices to ghostly creatures. So you could offer it to spirits and ghosts for special powers. People do this to this day. To this day. I mean, I personally know people who did this. I personally met people who would do animal sacrifices. Because, you know, from Brazil, you get more of these more ancient traditions. People would, you know, kill animals. They still do it. They kill animals for a completely mundane purpose, to get power, to get something, to hurt somebody else, to, you know, to get some benefit for themselves. So it's kind of evil. So these things, Krishna says, were never encouraged. So this is not the Vedas. You shouldn't be doing this, he's saying. So he's denouncing these practices that are in the Vedas, and of course are all over the world as well. Purport. The Vedic scriptures sanction occasional animal sacrifice to satisfy cruel, low-class men who cannot live without the taste of flesh and blood. Such concessions, however, are restricted by rigorous obligatory rituals and are meant to gradually discourage animal killing, just as the exorbitant cost of a liquor license restricts the number of retail outlets selling alcoholic beverages. But unscrupulous persons misconstrue such restrictive sanctions and declare that Vedic sacrifice is meant for killing animals in order to enjoy sense gratification. Being materialistic, they desire to attain the planets of the forefathers or demigods and thus worship such beings. Sometimes materialistic persons are attached to the subtle lifestyle of ghosts and worship ghostly creatures. These methods constitute gross ignorance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the actual enjoyer of all sacrifice and austerity. The demons perform Vedic sacrifice but are inimical to Lord Narayan, for they consider the demigods, the forefathers, or Lord Shiva to be equal to God. Although understanding the authority of Vedic rituals, they do not accept the ultimate Vedic conclusion and therefore never surrender to God. Thus, false religious principles flourish in the demonic societies of the animal killers. Although in countries like America, people outwardly profess to be followers of God alone, actual worship and glorification is offered to innumerable popular heroes, such as entertainers, politicians, athletes, and other equally insignificant persons. Animal killers, being grossly materialistic, are inevitably attracted to the extraordinary features of material illusion. They cannot understand the real platform of Krishna consciousness or spiritual life. So it's a powerful statement here being made by the acharyas here. And what they're saying is, yeah, you can even say, people say they're devotees of God. It takes the example of America, but this is pretty much all over the Western world. So a lot of people say they are devoted to God. They profess devotion, but actually they really do worship mundane people. They worship the sports person, the politician, the musician, the rich person, the influential, whatever influencer they are into. So they really worship these people, and instead of worshiping God. And this happens because it's connected to the meat eating. So this whole meat eating lowers your consciousness a lot. And, I was a big meat eater, so if you are now, don't take offense. This is the process. I'm not saying, hate the sin, not the sinner. But the fact is that the culture of meat eating, it lowers your consciousness. It makes you dull to finer things in life, to the finer concepts of life. It dulls your mind. It blinds you spiritually. Just because of all that violence that you're consuming. When you consume dead animals, you're consuming violence, tamaguna. So that blinds you. Tama means darkness, means ignorance. It's translated as mode of darkness, mode of ignorance, because it's covering. So these tamasic practices, especially meat eating, foremost meat eating, but also consuming alcohol or drugs of any kind, these very quickly enshroud you in darkness and in ignorance. And so you can't see things properly, you can't understand things properly because you're covering yourself with ignorance and darkness. So then they become because people are materialistic, because they value materialistic things, they will value those people who are demonstrating those materialistic qualities they value. So if you like money and somebody's very rich, then you're like, oh, look, that person's so wonderful. If you like, beauty and somebody's very beautiful, like, oh, look at that. If you like, abilities and fame and somebody's very famous and full of, it's like, oh, you worship that person. And you don't understand what's really going on. You get confused in life. Verse 31. Just as a foolish businessman gives up his real wealth in useless business speculation, foolish persons give up all that is actually valuable in life and instead pursue promotion to material heaven, which, although pleasing to hear about, is actually unreal, like a dream. Such bewildered persons imagine within their hearts that they will achieve all material blessings. So he's saying, again, this is a direct comparison, which he does also in Bhagavad-gita, of the Vedic path of mundane religion versus the spiritual Vedic path, yoga, Vedanta. Direct comparison, saying, look, this is just crazy, basically. It's like a dream. It's not real. Why? Because everything here is like a dream. It doesn't matter, like, oh, the Swarga actually exists. Yeah, but here actually exists, but everything's like a dream in the material world because it's not really true. It's an illusion, Maya. There is something deeper. There's something else going on, and you're missing the point. So again, the foolish businessman, he's like, instead of doing good business, you're doing foolish. You're giving up your real wealth for something that's not going to give you any result. So So you missed your chance, you misused what you have. And right now what we have is a human life. Great treasure of a human life. So we can't misuse this great treasure of a human life seeking more material pleasure only. We have to use this human life to seek the ultimate truth, to seek Krishna. And in so doing, you can have a very nice life here. You don't have to give up your best attempt at living a good life here for spirituality. You don't give it up. You just use it. You use your attempts at having the very best life to serve Krishna. And then you can see more and more, you can transfer your consciousness to the spiritual realm. You can transfer your consciousness beyond this world, beyond material existence, and start tasting that bliss, start experiencing that bliss of a spiritual life right now. Start living that love, start experiencing that love for God right now. So that's your ultimate self-interest. You can do that right now. Instead, people use this life just to seek more of the same thing. Purport. All over the world, people are working hard to achieve perfect sense gratification in this life or the next. As eternal living beings, part and parcel of Lord Krishna. We are naturally endowed with all bliss and knowledge in the association of the Lord. But giving up this exalted position of spiritual bliss and knowledge, we foolishly waste our time pursuing the phantasmagoria of bodily happiness. Just like a foolish businessman who squanders his real assets in imaginary business ventures that deliver no real profit. Okay. So let's stop here for now. I hope you've enjoyed that and have your rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love.